I never thought I'd be standing here, watching my daughter-in-law's world crumble around her. But after what she put my family through, I can't help but feel a twisted sense of satisfaction. My name is Olivia Callahan, and at 45 I thought I had it all figured out. A thriving interior design business, a loving husband, Ethan, who's been by my side through thick and thin, and our beautiful daughter, Sophia. Sophia was always the light of our lives, with her infectious smile and kind heart. When she brought home Jackson, I couldn't help but be charmed by his wit and charisma. "Mom, I think he's the one," Sophia gushed, her eyes sparkling with love and hope. Little did I know that behind that dazzling smile lurked a monster waiting to tear our family apart. Ethan, ever the supportive father, welcomed Jackson with open arms. "As long as Sophia's happy, I'm happy," he said, clapping Jackson on the back. I wished I could share his enthusiasm, but something about Jackson's smooth-talking ways left me uneasy. As their whirlwind romance progressed, I watched helplessly as Jackson's true colors began to bleed through the cracks of his carefully crafted facade. "Sophia, darling, don't you think it's time your parents helped us out a bit?" he'd say, his voice dripping with false sincerity. "A little money for a down payment on a house would be a nice gesture." I bristled at his audacity, but Sophia, blinded by love, convinced us to help. "Please, Mom, it would mean the world to us," she pleaded, her eyes welling with tears. Against my better judgment, we agreed, hoping to keep the peace and support our daughter's happiness. But peace was the last thing we found as Sophia and Jackson moved into their picturesque suburban home, just a stone's throw from our own. Jackson quit his job, content to leech off Sophia's hard-earned income. The tension between them was palpable, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. My fears were confirmed when I noticed the bruises on Sophia's arms, the telltale signs of Jackson's abuse. "Sophia, you don't have to put up with this," I urged, my heart breaking for my little girl. But Sophia, ever the loyal wife, defended him. "It's not what you think, Mom. He's just going through a rough patch," she insisted, her voice trembling with fear and denial. Ethan and I were at a loss, watching our daughter suffer in silence as Jackson's demands grew more outrageous. "Sophia, I've been thinking," he said, his eyes gleaming with greed. "Wouldn't it be great if your parents signed over their business to me? Think of all the things we could do with that kind of money." I felt my blood boil, rage coursing through my veins. How dare he try to manipulate our daughter into betraying us? But as I looked into Sophia's eyes, I saw the depth of her pain and the fear that held her captive. At that moment, I knew I had to take matters into my own hands. I would stop at nothing to save my daughter from the monster she'd married, even if it meant risking everything we'd built. The battle lines were drawn, and I was ready to fight for my family, no matter the cost. As the weeks turned into months, Jackson's true colors began to show more vividly. His once charming demeanor gave way to a cruel and manipulative side that left Sophia feeling trapped and helpless. "Sophia, darling," he'd say, his voice dripping with false affection, "don't you think it's time we asked your parents for a little help with the down payment on our dream house?" Sophia, ever the dutiful daughter, came to us with pleading eyes. "Mom, Dad, I know it's a lot to ask, but it would mean the world to us if you could help with the down payment. We've found the perfect place, and I know we can make it work." Ethan and I exchanged a worried glance, but the desperation in our daughter's voice tugged at our heartstrings. "Okay, Sophia," I said, trying to keep the reluctance from my voice. "We'll help you with the down payment, but please be careful. I don't want to see you get in over your head." Sophia threw her arms around me, tears of gratitude streaming down her face. "Thank you, Mom. You have no idea how much this means to us." But as Sophia and Jackson moved into their beautiful suburban home, just a short drive from our own, the cracks in their relationship began to widen. Jackson, no longer content with Sophia's income alone, quit his job and began to leech off her hard-earned money. "Why should I work when you're doing so well, babe?" he'd say, lounging on the couch while Sophia worked long hours to keep them afloat. The tension between them was palpable, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. My fears were confirmed when Sophia showed up at our doorstep one evening, her eyes red and puffy from crying. "Mom, I don't know what to do, she sobbed, collapsing into my arms. Jackson's been so angry lately, and he's started to get physical with me. My heart shattered as I held my little girl, her body shaking with fear and pain. I gently pushed up the sleeves of her shirt, revealing the dark bruises that marred her delicate skin. Sophia, you don't have to put up with this, I said, my voice firm but loving. You need to leave him before it gets worse. But Sophia, blinded by her love for Jackson, shook her head. I can't, Mom. He needs me. He's just going through a rough patch, and I know he'll change. I have to be there for him. I watched helplessly as Sophia returned to the house she shared with her abuser, my heart heavy with the knowledge that there was little I could do to save her from his clutches. Ethan and I spent sleepless nights worrying about our daughter, praying that she would find the strength to leave before it was too late. But Jackson's demands only escalated, and soon he was pressuring Sophia to convince us to sign over our successful business to him. Think about it, Soph, he'd say, his eyes gleaming with greed. With your parents' company under my control, we could be living the high life, no more worrying about money, no more struggling to make ends meet. I was livid when Sophia approached us with Jackson's latest scheme. Absolutely not, I said, my voice trembling with anger. We've worked too hard to build this business, and I'll be damned if I let that man get his hands on it. Sophia's face crumpled, and I could see the conflict raging within her. She was torn between her loyalty to her husband and her love for her family, and it was tearing her apart. As she left our house that day, I knew I had to take action. I couldn't sit back and watch as Jackson destroyed my daughter's life. It was time to gather the evidence I needed to expose him for the monster he truly was, no matter the cost. The next time Sophia came to visit, I couldn't help but notice the fresh bruises on her arms. She tried to hide them beneath long sleeves, but I knew my daughter too well. Sophia, what happened? I asked, gently pulling her aside. She flinched at my touch, her eyes darting away from mine. It's nothing, Mom. I just bumped into the door, that's all. I felt a surge of anger rising within me. Don't lie to me, Sophia. I know those bruises are from Jackson. You can't keep making excuses for him. Sophia's eyes filled with tears, and she pulled away from me. You don't understand, Mom. He's not always like this. He's just been under a lot of stress lately, and sometimes he lashes out, but he always apologizes afterwards, and he promises to change. I shook my head, my heart breaking for my daughter. Sophia, this isn't love. No man who truly loves you would ever lay a hand on you. You need to leave him before it's too late. But Sophia was stubborn, and she refused to see the truth. I can't leave him, Mom. He needs me, and besides, where would I go? We have a life together, a home. I can't just walk away from that. I tried to reason with her, to make her see that her safety and well-being were more important than any material possessions, but she wouldn't listen. She left that day with a promise to call if things got worse, but I knew in my heart that she wouldn't. Ethan and I were at a loss. We watched helplessly as our daughter suffered in silence, unable to break free from the cycle of abuse that held her captive. We tried to talk to her, to offer her a way out, but she always had an excuse, a reason to stay. And then, just when we thought things couldn't get any worse, Jackson dropped a bombshell. Sophia, I've been thinking, he said, his voice smooth as silk. Your parents' business is doing so well, and I know they want what's best for us. Why don't you convince them to sign it over to me? Think of all the things we could do with that kind of money. I was furious when Sophia came to us with Jackson's latest demand. Absolutely not. See, I said, my voice shaking with rage. We've worked too hard to build this business, and I'll be damned if I let that man get his hands on it. Sophia's face fell, and I could see the fear in her eyes. But, Mom, he's not going to take no for an answer. If I don't convince you, he'll hurt me. My heart shattered into a million pieces, and I pulled my daughter into my arms. Sophia, listen to me. You don't have to go back to him. We can protect you. We can keep you safe. But Sophia was too far gone, too deeply entrenched in Jackson's web of lies and manipulation. She pulled away from me, her eyes hard and determined. I'm sorry, Mom, but I have to do this. I love him, and I know he loves me too. He's just going through a tough time right now, but he'll change. I know he will. As she walked out the door that day, I felt a sense of despair wash over me. How could I save my daughter from a man who had such a hold over her? How could I make her see that she deserved so much better than the life she was living? But I knew I couldn't give up. I had to find a way to expose Jackson for the monster he truly was, to gather the evidence I needed to prove to Sophia that he would never change. And so, with a heavy heart and a determined spirit, I set out to do just that. I would stop at nothing to save my daughter, even if it meant risking everything I held dear. I thought I had seen the depths of Jackson's depravity, but nothing could have prepared me for the betrayal that came next. It was a sunny afternoon when my best friend Lila called me in tears. "Olivia, I don't know how to tell you this, but I just caught Jackson with my daughter Avery. They were in bed together." I felt my blood run cold, a wave of nausea washing over me. How could he do this to Sophia, to our family? I thanked Lila for telling me and hung up the phone, my mind racing with the implications of this revelation. I knew I had to confront Sophia, to make her see the truth about the man she had married. But when I arrived at their house, I found her in a state of shock, her eyes red and puffy from crying. "I caught them, Mom," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I came home early from work and found them in our bed. How could he do this to me?" I wrapped my arms around her, holding her close as she sobbed into my shoulder. "Sophia, I know this is hard, but you have to leave him. He's never going to change, and he's only going to keep hurting you." But even in the face of such blatant infidelity, Sophia couldn't bring herself to leave. "I can't, Mom. He said he'll ruin me if I try to leave him. He'll take everything, and I'll be left with nothing." I felt a white-hot rage building inside me, a fury unlike anything I had ever known. This man had not only abused and manipulated my daughter, but now he was threatening to destroy her if she dared to stand up for herself. I knew I had to take matters into my own hands. Over the next few weeks, I began to gather evidence of Jackson's misdeeds. I hired a private investigator to follow him, to document his every move. I saved every threatening text message, every abusive voicemail. I took photos of Sophia's bruises, of the holes he had punched in the walls of their home. I was building a case against him, a dossier of his crimes that would ensure he would never be able to hurt my daughter again. But even as I worked tirelessly to bring him down, Jackson's hold on Sophia only seemed to grow stronger. He began to isolate her from her friends and family, convincing her that we were all against her, that we didn't understand their love. He monitored her every move, tracking her phone and her social media accounts. He even went so far as to install cameras in their home so he could watch her every move. Sophia was living in a prison of her own making, trapped by a man who had stolen her freedom and her dignity. But still, she couldn't bring herself to leave. "I'm pregnant, Mom," she told me one day, her voice barely above a whisper. "I can't raise this baby alone. I need him." I felt my heart shatter into a million pieces, the weight of her words crushing me like a ton of bricks. My daughter was carrying the child of a monster, a man who had done nothing but hurt and abuse her. But I knew I couldn't give up. Not now, not when she needed me more than ever. I redoubled my efforts, gathering more evidence and building a stronger case against Jackson. I reached out to domestic violence advocates and lawyers, seeking their guidance and support. I knew that the road ahead would be long and difficult, but I was determined to see it through, no matter the cost. And so, with a heavy heart and a fierce determination, I prepared for the battle of my life. I would stop at nothing to save my daughter and my unborn grandchild from the clutches of a man who had stolen their lives. I would fight for them, even if it meant sacrificing everything I held dear. Because that's what a mother does, and I would never let them down. Armed with the evidence I had gathered, I knew it was time to confront Jackson. I invited him to meet me at a local coffee shop, a neutral ground where I hoped he wouldn't cause a scene. When he arrived, he was all smiles and charm, but I could see the darkness lurking behind his eyes. "Jackson," I said, my voice steady and calm, "I know what you've been doing to my daughter. I have proof of your infidelity, your financial exploitation, and your abuse. If you don't leave Sophia and disappear from our lives, I will take this evidence to the police and the courts. You will lose everything." For a moment he looked stunned, his mouth hanging open in disbelief. But then his face twisted into a sneer, and he leaned across the table, his voice low and menacing. "You think you can threaten me, Olivia? You have no idea who you're dealing with. I own Sophia, and I own that baby growing inside her. If you try to take them away from me, I will destroy you and your precious family." I felt a chill run down my spine, but I refused to back down. "You're wrong, Jackson. You don't own anyone, and you certainly don't own my daughter or my grandchild. I will fight you with everything I have, and I will not rest until you are out of their lives for good." He laughed then, a cold, cruel sound that made my skin crawl. "You're too late, Olivia. Sophia will never leave me, not now, not when she's carrying my child. And if you try to take me to court, I'll make sure that baby is taken away from her too. I'll paint her as an unfit mother, a woman who chose to stay with her abuser. Who do you think the courts will believe, a successful businessman like me or a weak, pathetic excuse for a woman like her?" I felt my blood boil with rage, my fingers itching to wrap around his throat and squeeze the life out of him. But I knew I had to be smart, had to play this game by his rules if I wanted to win. "You're underestimating me, Jackson, and you're underestimating the power of a mother's love. I will not let you hurt my daughter or my grandchild any longer. This ends now." With that, I stood up and walked away, my heart pounding in my chest. I knew I had just declared war on a man who would stop at nothing to get what he wanted, but I also knew that I had no choice. I had to protect my family, no matter the cost. Over the next few weeks, I worked tirelessly to build my case against Jackson. I hired the best lawyer money could buy, a woman named Samantha who had a reputation for being tough as nails in the courtroom. I also brought on a private investigator, a former police detective named Jack, who had a knack for uncovering secrets. Together, we dug deeper into Jackson's past, uncovering a trail of lies and deceit that stretched back years. We found out that he had a history of domestic violence, that he had been accused of fraud and embezzlement at his previous job. We even discovered that he had fathered a child with another woman, a secret he had kept hidden from Sophia and the rest of the world. I knew that this information would be devastating to my daughter, but I also knew that it was the only way to break Jackson's hold on her. And so, with a heavy heart, I sat her down and told her everything we had uncovered. I watched as the color drained from her face, as the reality of who she had married sank in. "I'm so sorry, Sophia," I said, my voice breaking with emotion. "I know this is hard, but you have to leave him. You have to do what's best for you and your baby, and I promise I will be with you every step of the way. We will get through this together." She nodded, tears streaming down her face, and I knew that in that moment she had found the strength to break free. She had found the courage to fight for herself and her child, and I had never been more proud of her. The battle was far from over, but with my daughter by my side, I knew that we would emerge victorious in the end. As Samantha, Jack, and I dug deeper into Jackson's past, the extent of his deceit and cruelty became increasingly clear. We uncovered a trail of broken hearts and shattered lives, all left in the wake of his selfish pursuits. It seemed that everywhere he went, he left a path of destruction behind him. Jack managed to track down several of Jackson's ex-girlfriends, each with a harrowing tale of abuse and manipulation. They spoke of how he had charmed them with his good looks and smooth talk, only to reveal his true colors once he had them under his spell. He had isolated them from their friends and family, controlled every aspect of their lives, and even resorted to physical violence when they dared to defy him. But perhaps the most shocking revelation came from his former employer, a successful tech startup where he had worked as a senior executive. They told us how Jackson had embezzled hundreds of thousands of dollars from the company, funneling the money into his own personal accounts. When they had confronted him about the missing funds, he had flown into a rage, threatening to destroy the company and everyone in it. Armed with this damning evidence, Samantha and I knew it was time to present our case to Sophia. We sat her down in my living room, the same room where she had played as a little girl, and laid out all the proof we had gathered. We showed her the police reports, the financial records, the testimonies from his past victims, and as she read through each document, I watched the color drain from her face, the reality of who she had married sinking in. "I can't believe I was so blind," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. I thought he loved me, but he was just using me all along. How could I have been so stupid? I reached out and took her hand, squeezing it gently. You're not stupid, Sophia. You're a victim, just like all the other women he's hurt. But you're also strong and brave, and you have the power to break free from his control. We'll be with you every step of the way, but you have to be the one to take that first step. For a long moment she was silent, her eyes fixed on the papers scattered across the coffee table. Then, slowly, she nodded. I'll do it. I'll leave him, and I'll fight for full custody of our child. I won't let him hurt anyone else ever again. I felt a surge of pride and relief wash over me, and I pulled her into a tight hug. I'm so proud of you, Sophia. You're doing the right thing, and we'll be right beside you no matter what. But even as we celebrated this small victory, we knew that the battle was far from over. Jackson wouldn't go down without a fight, and he had already proven that he was willing to go to any lengths to get what he wanted. Sure enough, as soon as he got wind of Sophia's plans to leave him, he launched a vicious smear campaign against our family. He spread rumors and lies about us, painting us as greedy, manipulative monsters who were trying to tear apart a loving family. He even went so far as to accuse me of being an abusive mother, claiming that I had beaten Sophia as a child and was now trying to control her life. The allegations were ridiculous, but they still took their toll. Our business suffered as clients pulled away, not wanting to be associated with such scandal. Ethan and I spent sleepless nights worrying about how we would keep the company afloat, how we would protect our reputation and our livelihood. But even in the face of such adversity, we refused to back down. We knew that the truth was on our side, and we were determined to see justice served. And so, with Samantha leading the charge, we prepared for the fight of our lives. The divorce proceedings were about to begin, and we were ready to expose Jackson for the monster he truly was. The divorce proceedings were a brutal, drawn-out affair, with Jackson and his high-powered attorneys fighting tooth and nail to paint Sophia as an unfit mother. They dragged up every mistake she had ever made, every moment of weakness or vulnerability, and twisted it to fit their narrative. They even stooped so low as to suggest that her pregnancy was the result of an affair, not a loving marriage. But Samantha was a force to be reckoned with, and she refused to let them get away with their lies. She countered every accusation with hard evidence and expert testimony exposing Jackson's true nature for all to see. She brought in witnesses who spoke of his violent temper, his controlling behavior, and his utter lack of remorse for the pain he had caused. And then, in a moment that will forever be etched in my memory, she called Jackson himself to the stand. For hours, she grilled him on every aspect of his life, from his shady business dealings to his history of abuse. She pushed and prodded, refusing to let him evade or obfuscate, until finally he cracked. In a fit of rage, he leaped from the witness box and lunged at Samantha, his face contorted with fury. The bailiffs had to physically restrain him as he screamed obscenities and threats, his true colors finally on display for all to see. And in that moment, I knew that we had won. The judge wasted no time in rendering her verdict. Sophia was granted full custody of their child, with Jackson allowed only supervised visitation until he could prove that he was no longer a danger to them. He was also ordered to pay child support and restitution for the money he had stolen and the damage he had caused to our business. As the gavel fell, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. It was finally over. My daughter was safe, and the monster who had tormented her for so long had been brought to justice. I watched as Jackson was led away in handcuffs, his once charming face now twisted with hatred and rage. In the days that followed, the truth about Jackson's lies began to spread like wildfire. The people who had once been taken in by his charm and charisma now saw him for what he truly was, a manipulative, abusive con artist who had left a trail of destruction in his wake. His reputation was in tatters, and he soon found himself unemployed and ostracized by the very community that had once embraced him. Meanwhile, Ethan and I worked tirelessly to rebuild our business and our reputation. It was a slow and painful process, but with the help of our loyal clients and employees, we managed to weather the storm. We even found a way to turn the scandal to our advantage, positioning ourselves as a company that stood up for what was right, no matter the cost. And through it all, Sophia was our rock. Despite everything she had been through, she remained strong and determined, focused on building a better life for herself and her child. She threw herself into her work, earning a promotion and a raise, and even started taking classes at night to finish her degree. I watched with pride as my little girl blossomed into a confident, capable woman, a far cry from the broken shell she had been just a few short months ago. And I knew that, no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, as a family. As for Jackson, well, let's just say that karma has a way of catching up with people like him. Last I heard, he was facing criminal charges for fraud and embezzlement, and his once promising future had been reduced to a lifetime of shame and regret. But I didn't waste too much time thinking about him. After all, he was just a footnote in our story now, a cautionary tale of what happens when you let greed and ego consume you. No, our story was just beginning, and I knew that, with my family by my side, there was nothing we couldn't overcome. We had weathered the storm and emerged stronger and more united than ever before. And that, in the end, was the greatest victory of all. The day Sophia gave birth to her beautiful baby girl was one of the happiest moments of my life. As I held my granddaughter in my arms, I felt a rush of love and protectiveness that took my breath away. She was perfect in every way, with her mother's delicate features and her father's piercing blue eyes. But even as we celebrated this new addition to our family, I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. Jackson may have been out of the picture legally, but I knew that he wouldn't give up on his child so easily. He had already proven that he was willing to go to any lengths to get what he wanted, and I feared that he might try to use his daughter as a pawn in his twisted games. My fears were confirmed a few weeks later when Sophia received a letter from Jackson's attorney. In it, he demanded joint custody of their daughter, claiming that he had been unfairly denied his parental rights. He even had the audacity to suggest that Sophia was an unfit mother and that he should be the one to raise their child. I was furious when Sophia showed me the letter, my blood boiling with rage and indignation. How dare he try to manipulate the situation like this after everything he had put her through? I wanted to march right down to his attorney's office and give him a piece of my mind, but Samantha cautioned me against it. "He's just trying to get a rise out of you, Olivia," she said calmly. "He knows he doesn't have a leg to stand on legally, so he's resorting to scare tactics. The best thing we can do is ignore him and focus on building a strong case for Sophia's sole custody." I knew she was right, but it didn't make it any easier to sit back and watch as Jackson continued to harass and intimidate my daughter. He would show up at her work unannounced, demanding to see his child. He would leave threatening messages on her phone, promising to make her pay for keeping him away from his daughter. He even went so far as to hire a private investigator to follow her around, looking for any dirt he could use against her in court. But Sophia remained strong and resolute, refusing to be cowed by his bullying tactics. She poured all of her energy into being the best mother she could be, showering her daughter with love and attention. She even started seeing a therapist to work through the trauma of her abusive marriage, determined to break the cycle of violence and create a better life for herself and her child. As the months passed, I watched with pride as Sophia blossomed into a confident, capable single mother. She navigated the challenges of parenting with grace and resilience, leaning on her family and friends for support when she needed it. And through it all, she never lost sight of what was truly important, the health and happiness of her little girl. Meanwhile, Jackson's life continued to unravel, his once charming facade crumbling to reveal the bitter, broken man beneath. He lost his job, his friends, and his reputation, becoming a pariah in the community he had once dominated. And as I watched him spiral deeper into despair and self-destruction, I couldn't help but feel a sense of grim satisfaction. This was the price he had to pay for his crimes, for the pain and suffering he had inflicted on my family. He had sown the seeds of his own destruction, and now he was reaping the bitter harvest. And while a part of me felt sorry for him, a larger part of me knew that he had brought this upon himself. In the end, Sophia was granted sole custody of her daughter, with Jackson allowed only supervised visitation once a month. It was a small victory, but a meaningful one, a testament to the strength and resilience of my incredible daughter. As I sat in the courtroom that day, holding my granddaughter in my arms, I felt a sense of peace and contentment wash over me. We had been through hell and back, but we had emerged stronger and more united than ever before. And I knew that, no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, as a family. Because that's what family does. We love, we support, and we protect each other, no matter what. And in the end, that love is the most powerful force in the world, capable of overcoming even the darkest of demons. And as I looked into my granddaughter's eyes, I knew that she would always be surrounded by that love, now and forever.